It is Constitution Day, so let's talk about my favorite amendment, the first one. Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this is a special episode in honor of Constitution Day. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Legal AF so you can get all the updates on the craziness going on in our current political situation. So, today being Constitution Day, I want to break down my favorite amendment. And it may seem like, oh, well, that's easy. The first one, okay. But the first one is first for a reason. It sets the tone for the rest of the Constitution. And it sets the tone for what this country was intended to be. So what does the First Amendment say? It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So let's break down what that means. First off, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. In this country, you're allowed to practice whatever religion that you subscribe to, whether it's Catholicism, whether it's Christianity in terms of born-again Christian, evangelical Christian, Baptist, Unitarian, Satanism, which is actually a religion, Wicca. It doesn't matter. It's all about the fact that the government cannot dictate what you can and can't do in the honor and the practice of your religion. And the central thing that's going to be the thread throughout everything I'm going to be discussing is that, number one, this is about government action. So people are like, oh, well, a private company fired somebody because they disagreed with a post that they put on social media. Well, there are First Amendment ramifications involved, but at the end of the day, if the company is not a government actor, they are not held to the same standard as a government actor. And who's a government actor? That's literally Congress. That's the president. That's a public university. That is a public middle school, whatever the case may be. Those government in the mayor's office, those are government actors. Those are government institutions. So they cannot interfere with your establishment and practice of religion. And you have to be able to exercise your religion freely. So again, even if the government disagrees with your religion, there's all this discussion that this is a Christian country, period, end of. Well, it's not. It's not. Because there's no official religion of the United States, and Congress cannot designate a specific religion for the United States. Everyone has the right to be able to practice whatever religion, however they see fit. Obviously, if you're doing something illegal, like, harming people or something like that without their consent, separate discussion. But as long as you are practicing your religion, you cannot be prevented from doing so as long as you're comporting with the rest of the laws of the United States. So that's why you see lawsuits around women being forced to take off their head coverings, especially if they're of the Muslim faith. And let's say they're going through TSA and now they're like, oh, we need to pat you down. And they're taking their head coverings off in front of other people or in front of men, right? That is impacting their free exercise of practicing their religion, because their religion dictates that they need to keep their hair covered. There are ways to deal with that. So for instance, if you wanted to search a woman of the Muslim faith who had her head covering, well, to be respectful of that, you have another woman searcher. You take her into a private room and conduct the search that way. So these are things that we have to consider as part of the First Amendment. The second part, which has been really messy lately, the abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. So Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. That's kind of gone sideways lately. So it's time to come back to basics. Free speech in this country means If the government hates your viewpoint, too bad, so sad for them. They cannot prevent you from saying what's on your mind. Period, end of story. And there should be no consequences for you saying what's on your mind in that instance. So let me give a very interesting example from this week. So the president was slammed over some statements he made, basically saying he's not sure about the First Amendment. So he was talking about a decades-long peace vigil protest that he had removed from near the White House. And he was bragging that it was gone the next day after he found out about it. And he claimed that the protester was part of a violent radical left group. Okay, point me to the violence that they committed, but none? Okay. So the reporter who was listening to this during the press conference said, well, they still have a First Amendment right, though. They're still out there protesting. And the president responds, yeah, well, I'm not so sure about that. Excuse me? And Attorney General Pam Bondi, in a separate interview, basically doubled down and also said that there's limits on First Amendment rights, saying that law enforcement would go after hate speech. She said, we will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech. Okay, well, on its surface, it sounds reasonable, right? Oh, yes, we can't have hateful speech in our political discourse or within our country and all of that. Who makes a definition of hate speech? And does that definition shift based on who's in power? Because that's a problem. Free speech, period, end of story. If the government does not agree with you posting about somebody's murder, or if they don't agree about you posting your issues about the current administration, they should not go after you. They cannot go after you. It is contrary to the First Amendment. So if you are fired from your job at a public institution as a result of something you said, that is grounds for a lawsuit. Because the government shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. And now, I know it says shall make no law, but that also means they cannot take action against you. So it's not just can Congress pass a law saying, okay, you're not allowed to say X, Y, Z. No, the government can't go after you, use the powers that they have to go after you because you are exercising your right of free speech. And the same thing goes with the freedom of the press. We're now hearing about different reporters getting fired for commenting on their personal pages with regards to recent events in the public discourse. Again, that's problematic, especially, again, remember the example I gave in the beginning about a private corporation firing someone and, that could be a gray area. Well, here's the rub. If the government is pressuring the private company to fire the person for their exercise of free speech, that's also ground for a lawsuit. Because the government cannot force other people to do their dirty work for them under the clause of, oh, this is inappropriate or whatever the case may be. Because again, you're abridging the freedom of speech. Next part, the right of people to peaceably assemble. Well, just gave an example about that. If you're assembling peacefully, you're allowed to do that. Violence, separate issue. January 6th, separate issue. But a nonviolent protest about the death of a person at the hands of police or over a war or whatever the case may be, as long as you're being peaceful, that is permissible under the First Amendment. Now, the government can implement time, place, and manner restrictions. So, for instance, they may, you want to protest in the middle of the night, like at midnight. Well, that's obviously going to disturb other people. So the government can make a law saying you can only protest between, 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. or whatever the case may be. But it has to be reasonable and it can't go overboard and it has to be applied evenly. So it can't be like, oh, these people can protest at midnight, but these people can't. If the rule is nobody can protest at midnight, that means nobody can protest at midnight. The government cannot pick and choose based on whether or not they agree with what the protesters are saying. And we saw that rub in Charlottesville back in 2017. And this was a time when I was at the ACLU of Florida, which is why First Amendment is so important to me. But the ACLU of Virginia came under heavy fire because the Unite the Right people wanted to protest or have a rally, during the day in a park. And the local Charlottesville government did not want to give them a permit to be able to gather. So the ACLU of Virginia was like, hey, that's improper governmental interference with the right of the people to peacefully assemble. And at that time, there was no indication that the protest was going to turn violent. And so the government had to give in and give a permit to the Unite the Right people. Well, we saw how that went. But at the end of the day, they were not wrong for doing that. Because again, if there was no indication that there would be violence, you can't interfere with the right of people to peacefully assemble, no matter how you feel about what they're saying. And what they're saying could be vile as all get out. But at the end of the day, they have the right to say it, and you can't abridge that right. And then if there's counter protesters, well, you got to make sure that everybody stays safe and peaceful, but they have the right to peacefully assemble to counter what is being said on the other side. And the last aspect is the ability to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So again, if people are petitioning the government, now when you say petition, you're thinking, oh, does that mean they have to write something? No. It just means that you're airing out your grievances with what is happening with the government. And that is protected by the First Amendment. So all of this backlash around people being critical or sharing other people's words and saying, well, hey, this is what I think about such and such and so and so. Well, the government should not be intervening in that. They cannot intervene in that. They are, but they're not supposed to. So this, again, is all fodder for lawsuits. Now, of course, what happens with these types of lawsuits? They're going to be filed in federal courts. They have to go through that whole process, and you may win in the trial court, but then there's going to be an appeal. What is the appellate court going to say? And eventually, does it end up in front of the Supreme Court? And what are they going to do? So all eyes are now on the Supreme Court because I anticipate that more of these free speech, First Amendment challenges are going to be coming up. And are they going to retreat from what the founding fathers deemed to be most important, which is the ability to practice your religion, the ability for you to speak freely, the ability for the press to speak freely, the right of the people to assemble peacefully, and the right of the people to petition their government. So that's your First Amendment lesson for today. Sound off in the comments with your thoughts. I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and happy Constitution Day. Take an opportunity to Google the Constitution, read it, skim through. It's an interesting read. And there are a lot of great sites out there that really break down and link off to different examples. So take a moment just to learn a little bit more. It may be a great refresher because, A, we may not remember all the stuff that we learned in elementary school, or if you came here from another country, you may not have been exposed to what the Constitution is and what it means. So take a minute today and give it a read. And again, sound off in the comments and let me know your thoughts. Take care.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.